All right, this is the post show for AEW All In from Wembley Stadium. We're just using the Double G show brand here just because since I'm hosting it, it could be the Dynamite show. Hell, it could even be Speaking of Strong Style because as you see, the two men joining me, Paul Fontaine on the bottom and Jeremy Finestone. Fellas, we just saw what was a pretty darn good AEW pay-per-view. I will say that our Discord was on fire. That was maybe the most fun I've had talking about a wrestling show in our Discord's history, which is not even a year old yet.
It's because I was there.
Well, you're always there though, and it didn't make it to the last show. But I think a show like this, where you get a lot of variety, you get a lot of good wrestling. Maybe we missed out on that one great match, and then you get the whatever it was in the main event, the little bit of goofiness, some storytelling to me, and I'm going to explain my bias immediately. I watched a lot of Ric Flair and Terry Funk this week, so to kind of like go from that mindset to what we saw in the main event, which was completely storyline driven. It was the Bryce Remberg over the top performance match of the night. And so, there's some mixed responses about that. There's some people who absolutely loved it. And there's some people like me who was like, okay, I could have done without it. I would have rather them have used the vehicle of the wrestling match to be a little bit more serious. But at the end of the day, and this is really the only thing that matters, the business that they did on this show. Tony Khan said that he believes that there were over 90,000 people in the building. And I'm looking for the number here, the actual number. 81,035 was the paid number. So, you're talking about just historical numbers. So much so that they announced the return to Wembley a year in advance. And we haven't seen this year in advance thing since like WrestleMania, like in the in the late 90s or in the mid 2000s. When have someone announced the actual date and venue of a wrestling event that far in advance? I think this is the first time that this happened in a while.
Don't they do that for Mania every year?
They do not announce necessarily. Well, they save that for like we didn't know. You might be right. You may be right that they announce where we're going.
Yeah.
But for AEW, this was the first time that they've done something like that. And it just goes to show you that they believe that this was a historical show and that, this may be a home market for them. And we'll see. I made a joke about, the main event kind of killing the town, and a lot of people got really frustrated. It was a joke. It was an absolute joke. The business side of this show is 100% impressive, positive. You can take nothing away from these guys on what they delivered today. And we'll see, like, running it back, history will show that they're probably not going to be able to exactly outdo this number, right? Mm-hmm. But if you put enough people in there, it's not really going to matter because it's still going to be impressive and it's still going to be worth the value of doing this show. And a lot of people were wondering if they were going to do it. Like, could they go back to London or would they go to a different European, city? So that I just wanted to get that stuff out of the way because, that is the 100% positive. That is the stuff that you cannot deny about this show because we are going to talk about some of the other stuff which happened. And we might as well get the bad out of the way, which is the CM Punk and Jack Perry situation, which all three of us were kind of hearing about as information was coming. I know Brian Alvarez had some stuff. Brian's doing the gimmick of the paid tweets these days. Mm-hmm. And so he's getting people to pay for his stuff, which is very smart. Brian is a fantastic businessman. But it's no surprise, right, that CM Punk is at the middle of a situation. And I remember hearing, during the week of this, which is 100% positive, that, there was a little bit of worry about doing this big show and having all these guys together. And it plays out that Jack Perry and CM Punk had some sort of altercation, which Tony Khan did not comment on at the presser. He sort of acknowledged that it existed. Now, we know that Jack was sent home, so there was some decision making there. And from everything we know, it was right in front of Tony. So, whatever the investigation is, the investigation. I think he was there. So, but I mean, all that being said, we just should mention that. And I guess my first question, and Paul, you can go first here, is I think there is going to be an attempt, and maybe even this is the actual reality, to sort of babyface Punk in this scenario. The original report that we saw was pretty negative to him, or not really negative, but was clearly trying to portray him in a good light. And then the other reports that came out, there looks to be some blame to be made with Jack Perry. He pointed to the camera and mentioned the real glass thing, which he was told supposedly, according to the reports, to not mention, and he did. And then when Punk mentioned it to him as he finished his match, then that's where the altercation ensued. In some instances, we've seen that maybe Punk put a chokehold on him, but then Miro said that might have been BS. So that is the information that is out there. And I guess, just let you go first, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this idea that maybe Punk was not the bad guy here, which seems to be what the story is trying to say?
Well, my first instinct before I even knew about the altercation, like just watching the pre-show match happen live and hearing Jack Perry made that comment, like I was like, that was stupid. Like whether or not he was told that he couldn't do it or not, like what a dumb comment to make, because best case scenario is you're going to worst case scenario, you're going to rile up Punk on the biggest day of the company's life. And I mean, best case scenario, it was okayed with Punk, and it was just an inside line that most of the audience watching isn't even going to get. So, and it turns out it was the worst case scenario in this case, and he came up with this stupid idea and someone told him no, and he did it anyways, is essentially what it comes down to. And if that's the case, he deserves whatever's coming to him. Sending him home is kind of harsh. Like does he have to not even get to go on the charter jet? He's got to find a coach flight back to California. I don't know, but kind of harsh when you're at Wembley. But it was not a good look for sure, especially on this day.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the information and the way that it came out, the information came out when Punk was in the ring. So it was interesting. That part was interesting. And then if it is to be believed, as far as what we know, that it kind of happened in front of Joe and maybe Hobbs and maybe Tony, because as they were all sort of getting ready for their match, and Jack is coming back from his match. So that is the one blemish on an otherwise perfect night for AEW. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on this situation and whether or not why does Punk always have to be in the middle of this?
It really comes down to, I don't want to say there's bad leadership at AEW, but there is an absence of good leadership. Good leadership happens every day, and you maintain a culture in which everyone understands the expectations of your workplace and respecting each other and treating each other with dignity and respect. And people are just going into business for themselves. It's not just CM Punk. It's Jack Perry. It's in the past Andrade. It's Sammy Guevara. It's all of these different individuals that are coming in and coming out. And if CM Punk is a leader, he needs to act like a leader at all times and change his leadership style so that he is a leader to the people who don't want to follow him as well as the people who do. And the same goes for Tony Khan, because the buck, in fact, stops there with him. And I don't mean the pun intended or anything like that. But honestly, we just need good, consistent leadership in this company, because this is a great day. And the first thing we're talking about is a Punk fight in some way, shape, or form. And that can't keep happening.
Yeah, and we did it at the top to get it out of the way, because like I said, this was an almost perfect night for them. And Sam Shipman from Power Bombshells, she's watching the presser. I have it on in the background, but I cannot hear it. So she said that it's Orange Cassidy and Penta for the International Championship on Dynamite. and the winner faces Jon Moxley at All Out. So that is, they're building storylines right on the post show here on their presser, or the scrum, as Tony Khan calls it, even though Ryan Pike, who is a journalist himself, it frustrates him so much.
No time to waste.
So that is news coming out of that. So, all right, this Punk stuff, I'm sure there will be more information coming out during the week. There may even be more tonight. I'm sure we'll hear information that may be from Jack Perry's side and maybe the non-Punk fans. But that is where we stand with this. Like Jeremy said, on the biggest night, and if you're Tony Khan, that's what you're really frustrated about is, guys, let's figure, if you have to do it somewhere else, do it in private. To do it in a way that makes it all about you instead of about the company. Yeah, a little rough there. All right, so let's talk about some more of the news coming out. By the way, shout out to Sam and Mel. They did the pre-show, like almost 3 hours earlier than they normally do their show. So they were up early. They got it out there. I think they were off right as the 0-hour matches were about to start, and the audio is on the Patreon. If you listen to the audio side on our higher tier is the audio, which was up before the actual pay-per-view started. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the main event, because the main event was all storyline, and I've had mentioned this on a few of the shows this week, which I thought was interesting in that the WWE's major storyline, which is the Bloodline, there are some matches where maybe you thought Roman could have lost. The Cody match, I know there are some people who still think he was losing to Sammy. I never thought he was losing to Sammy. But for the most part, a lot of those matches, being that Roman is so dominant, the outcome is not really what the selling point of those main events are. It's the storyline and what's next in that storyline. So in this case, this match to me was very much like a Bloodline match in that I don't think people really thought Adam Cole was going to win, but they definitely wanted to see what was going to happen next. And we kicked off the 0 hour. Jeremy got to watch it. I didn't get to watch it because I was producing the Power Bombshells, but there was not really much of a tease of a breakup. It was literally there to show the friendship, to show the teamwork, to show that they beat the Aussie Open and they were going into this main event as tag team champions. And then as we get to this match, the entire story was about whether or not they were going to break up. Adam Cole was doing things that MJF wouldn't during the match. So he was, putting that friendship up and saying, no, winning the match is more important. And MJF had a few opportunities as well, and was like, no, the friendship is more important. And as you were going through this match, there were some things that happened which were there so that fans thought Adam Cole was either going to turn or he was going to win. The most ridiculous one was giving Bryce Remsburg the Panama Sunrise. Like, that was... Is it in Bryce Remsburg's contract that he can actually make it his match? Like, he can be the actual... Like, this is a three-way. This was a three-way tonight because he was out front and center as much as Adam Cole and MJF were in this match, which I know my good partner from the Fight Game podcast is going to have a lot to say on that. But Paul, what did you think of the obvious over-the-top acting? Like, we need to present this match. We need to shout out dialogue so that everybody can hear us and what we are thinking, rather than doing it in a more subtle way, which is what you see with the Bloodline stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the tone for this match to me was set, right at the beginning when they both show up and they're wrestling in t-shirts in a world title match, and they're matching t-shirts. And so it's telling you that the important thing is the friendship and not the belts. Bryce was ridiculous. I mean, you mentioned that sunrise spot, which, I mean, to me, I don't know why that's not a DQ. Then the other spot that really got me just rolling my eyes, and I could just hear John rolling over in his grave, and he's not even dead yet, was the spot where they were doing the rolling reversal cradles, and Bryce is in the middle of the ring just pounding the mat before they even get the shoulders down. Like it was just ridiculous. It was too much. But yeah, like the stuff that was going on, like, I mean, what gets me though is Adam Cole was perfectly fine with pile driving MJF on the steel table that refused to break,
and that was in retaliation to MJF not doing that.
Right, but then he, like, using the belt from the simp Roddy Strong is just too much.
Yeah,
like that's just a step he can't take.
Well, I think what that was, and actually I thought that was one of the better moments of not being a little bit more subtle, because what that was just by having Roddy Strong there. Roddy Strong was the devil on his shoulder and his own conscience. He had, by Roddy Strong being there, it made him think even more that doing this was a bad thing because Roddy wanted him to do it.
So that might have been better if they hadn't have done the table spot.
No. Yeah. I 100% agree with you.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
So then what would the motivation have been for Adam Cole wanting a count out win earlier in the match?
Yeah. Look, I think there was an emphasis on the fun, on the spots that would pop this, and this crowd that was just giant and into a lot of this stuff too. A lot of the stuff that, maybe personally I'm not that big of a fan of. I can't then say it was bad because the crowd really enjoyed it. And even though Jeremy and I watched it together with some other friends, even though our crowd was like, this is a little bit too over the top. If you go to our Discord, for the most part, I think people enjoyed the storytelling. So I can't say that it was a failure or whatever. I mean, I was joking about it that, they killed the town, but ultimately it was okay for that crowd. Now, we'll be able to measure this in a year when they come back, and if they do the 60,000 number that you threw out there, Paul, that's a success. And if they do half, then maybe not. But for this show on this night, that finish, I don't think ruined anything. And it sets up what it probably does is it sets up All Out and whatever they're going to do at All Out next week, and creates more intrigue there, which had to be part of the deal here. And I said all week, I kind of hope they don't turn on each other, because the ratings show us, except for maybe not last week, but the ratings show that generally the crowd will, or the audience will, watch their segments together just to see what is going to happen next. And so, they're the hot act. Have they jumped the shark? I thought they jumped the shark 2 weeks ago. They still came back and they were okay. They're still doing that same audience number. I know there was a Fonzie gif in our Discord, but really, you sort of have to see what happens next week and what they do at All Out. And maybe this is sort of their own bloodline where they just want to see how far they can go. And even if MJF and Adam Cole aren't going to be together, and they at some point will be pitted against each other, it is essentially still the same storyline. So it could be their version of the bloodline.
Someone texted me just after the show and asked what I think the main event is going to be for All Out. And my first thought was MJF and Cole defending the ROH tag team titles. Like, I don't know.
That was talked about in our group setting as well. That was an idea.
That. Yeah.
But so here's the question about All Out. And this, I think this is a natural progression of what we're talking about, which is Jeff Hawkins, myself, and Scott Young at some point this week are going to recap the last time WWE did this, which was Survivor Series 91 and this Tuesday in Texas, and all of the things that they did to basically have Survivor Series end in a way that you wanted to watch the next pay-per-view and pay for the next pay-per-view. The ROH Tag Team Championship match, is that good enough for a main event of a show that these same fans who paid for this show are then going to want to pay again.
Or do they do 2 matches again, a 0 hour and a regular match, and that plays into the story of the entire night?
Because who could they face for those titles that would make it interesting? The Bucks?
I was thinking Kingdom, which to me seems like the main event, not the main event of a pay-per-view, but we've already got, like, they've set up Moxley and Orange Cassidy, they've sent up Kenny Omega and Takeshita.
Which it looks like Sam also said in the chat that was definitely happening.
So maybe, that might be the main event, but there's a lot of other matches selling the show, perhaps. Because I think MJF and Cole is your main storyline. So it's kind of, you bring up the bloodline. If Roman's in a match, it's the main event. Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's for a belt or not. So perhaps the MJF Cole friendship is bigger than any championship in AEW right now.
To me, the Kingdom have not been on TV enough. They haven't won any matches on any TV that I've been watching. Mm-hmm. And so you bring them in as a unit, as someone to take seriously. And to me, like, look at how Aussie Open was treated in that 0 hour match. They were just the team that you put them up against. Like, it didn't matter who was really in that match. And so that is the problem, I think, with the Kingdom. Now, on Dynamite, can they do something on Dynamite to heat up the Kingdom as a killer group? I don't know about that, but they better try if that is the idea. I kind of wished, now, FTR won the match. My hope was that the Bucks were going to win that match, and then it's MJF and Adam Cole against FTR for those ROH tag team titles, because that is closer to a main event that you would want to pay for. And the other one that has been going in, that just went in our chat, was versus the Bullet Club Gold. That is a good match too, but you haven't set up anything on that. Everything Bullet Club Gold has done has been against the Elite, right?
Well, whoever ends up winning the titles from them has to be someone that's going to be on Ring of Honor. So there's a mid-tier kind of aspect of who exactly they're going to grab and take these titles from. Like, it feels like the ROH titles are props for the story rather than like the main driving focus.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So they're transitional champions, essentially. So the Kingdom makes a lot of sense, but you've made no investment to the long-term crowd in making them feel like these are viable people. So is there someone in between? Is this a show-long storyline where, the Kingdom take over a bunch of belts in AEW in one night, and all of a sudden they're supposed to be on the map? Those are the things that I'm kind of thinking that they might map out, because it just feels like this was an incomplete story tonight. They leaned on a lot of tropes to, extend things, like you're saying, with the bloodline. I don't think we're getting a conclusion next week either, but we're going headlong into the direction that it's supposed to be.
So I would just make sure. Now, who knows if they do this back-to-back pay-per-view gimmick again? Like, maybe All Out has got to, but Tony Khan loves doing that Labor Day show. So maybe this is just going to be the deal. The more you make All Out feel like an episode of Dynamite, I think you're just ruining that show. And that's what they have to avoid. This has to be something that you're not just getting on Dynamite or Collision. And so that would be my reason for not just putting them in a random tag match. I think you still need to make this thing special in some way. And, maybe like Jeremy said, they do an earlier match as a team, and then they both have separate matches later. You're kind of, it's a little bit too much, especially with how
the blood from a stone on that one.
Especially how much they wrestle on television or how much you see them on television. That is there's a risk there as well.
I'm not sure who would challenge Cole. Like, the logical answer would be Ospreay, but I don't feel like doing that match on 1 week build is the right move. But if they have
Roderick Strong versus Adam Cole next week,
you could. Oh, versus Cole, maybe versus MJF,
maybe.
Yeah.
I think
beat Jericho, didn't he?
Just the risk. The risk is that the more that you make this not important, mm-hmm. or just sort of normal stuff, the less, because this is not on Peacock, right? That's the thing, is this is not on Peacock. This is all you actually forcing people to pay out. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm intrigued about where they want to go. It doesn't mean I really like that match, but I'm definitely intrigued on where they go next. And because I thought the show was good enough, and in some instances, I thought this may be the best paced AEW show that I've ever seen. It was okay. Like I wasn't like, this main event turned me off, so thus I'm not liking the show. No, it's exactly the opposite. I'm still into this thing.
I got one last question for you about this. Do you think that they could do a Ring of Honor tag match on Collision and then actually reveal the main event for MJF on Collision the night before? Because they've shown that they don't seem to care or worry about the buy rate to these shows, and they might have already figured it tanked because of the amount of people that bought All In.
I think he really cares about the buy rate. That's why that's why he's so excited every time that they can, incrementally do it higher. And I think this buy rate for All In,
it could be big. I think
we heard that early number, right? The Andrew Zarian number.
I think it might break the record, but we'll see.
I know Brandon Thurston said he may have heard differently about that original number. But look, if this show does an insane amount of buys, then Tony's maybe like, okay, I don't really care about All Out. We already did, this is an extra pay-per-view essentially, so we're fine. But yeah, I mean that's a whole other situation going on with the business of the show, which is, again, like we said, super, super successful. All right, I guess we should just go through the show from start to finish. We talked about the main events. We don't have to do that. But let's go from the second 0 hour match. Now, this is the Jack Perry against Hook match that I didn't watch Collision, so I don't know how they exactly set this up. But Hook won the FTR title back, and this is where Jack had the line and where all the static was created. But ultimately, Paul, what did you think of this match to kick off or to get more people to pay attention that there was a pay-per-view going on?
I thought it was a good match. I thought maybe Hook's best singles match I've ever seen him have. But the only thing that confused me a little bit was, like, it seemed like the whole story of the match was about RVD, and I don't quite get that, because RVD just seemed like like a stepping stone on the way to the main event or to the big show, and not necessarily the focal point of the whole feud. But he's doing all these RVD spots, and the commentators are bringing up that he's making fun of RVD, and it's like, it would make more sense to me if it was Taz.
Yeah.
But an RVD and the FTW title, I just never really even got that connection. But I thought it was good, and fine.
I told Lance that it should have been him.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And he said
he wouldn't do it without like 3 months of training. He's
gone
on record.
The only match that he'll ever do again, and he still has to ask his wife for it, is the last match with Jericho. But it also has to be Jericho's retirement match. Could
have been Jericho, but I'm glad it wasn't.
Jeremy, your thoughts on this one?
I felt like it was almost a little too unnecessary to be hardcore. I don't take sides between Perry and Punk about the glass and whatnot, but it just seemed like you didn't need to go this hard and cut yourselves up in a pre-show in Wembley just because it was 80,000. You could have done other things and been a bit more safer. No one honestly came here to see that from you guys. I'm glad you wanted to put forth the effort, but it just seemed a bit much.
One other thing, the crowd set the tone for the night by chanting "Jungle Wanker." The match. I love that.
I wish they would have leaned into that stuff a little bit more. Like, sometimes, and I get it, like WWE would actually really dislike it if the crowd chanting sort of takes over the show because they want people to pay attention. But yeah, I like that stuff, especially because this is a very organic show. And I was mentioning to the folks who were in my group, that Wembley Stadium feel, like that's what all the big boxing fights that are out there, your Joshua, your Fury, you get those. And that was the infamous Mike Coppinger tweet, right? About like, those are big events. And so I think it did raise the level of what this show felt like, just being in that stadium. So for even before the opener, we got a glimpse of a star who does not currently work for AEW, but was just randomly in the crowd looking like $1 million. I'm not exactly sure what the reason was. Like, there was no reason for her to be there based off of like any possible future storyline, because she's still got stuff going on in Japan that is next for her. But Paul, what did you think about seeing Mercedes Moné in the crowd?
I was like, I don't know. Like, the weird thing to me was the placement of when they showed her. Like, I was expecting them to show her during the women's match, and they seemed to show her. You know, they mentioned her during the women's match, but I don't think they showed her. And yeah, so I mean, my initial thought was, oh, maybe she's just there as a fan. But I mean, no, they're not identifying her on camera, and I'm sure she's not dropping money on those seats. So yeah, it's interesting, and I think they're trying to set something up for her. And maybe it was just, they bring her in as a invited guest, and Tony's going to talk to her and try to work something out, and they could use her. I'll say that.
So Jeremy and I went to a show in San Jose in February, and one Phil Brooks was in the crowd just randomly for no reason whatsoever. And I kind of felt like, oh, this is just Mercedes, showing up similarly to watch an old friend who wanted to watch her match. And so that, I mean, I'm sure there's more to it, like you said, but that should be her reaction. Oh yeah,
she certainly didn't mind being seen. So
no,
there was definitely that aspect of it. I think a lot of the people who are actively following Japanese pro wrestling are looking toward Mercedes and Julia being a match that is some point in the horizon. But there's a whole lot of people that just want to see Mercedes anywhere and everywhere. And if Tony's going to make the full court press and, give her airtime and treat her like she's the Beyonce of like the pro wrestling world, with the way that he just went at her at the pre-show, and then near the acclaimed match of all matches, near the main event, which was sure, okay. The star power aura that they gave her makes me think that Tony's very interested, and Mercedes is at least entertaining the idea.
It would be absolutely fantastic if she does come in. But the thing that's always sort of hung over the heads of this decision is, if you're Tony Khan, you want her for a long time. You don't want her for 3 months, because it does you no good, and it does her no good either, because she just comes in to get beat. You want her for the long term so that you can actually create the division around her, because she would immediately be the best wrestler on the brand. And she and wherever you would go, if Jamie Hayter was able to make this recovery, like, that would be probably the best women's match that you could put on.
I do wonder, and this is complete speculation, I wonder if there's anything to the idea that Mercedes Moné and potentially Mariah May coming in together in some way, shape, or form might be something that they do. Because if they do a spectacular big group with Mercedes in the front and a couple other women that have been talked about potentially coming in, then all of a sudden you have this new faction that just turns the entire division on its end and actually gives AEW something to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about this opener. Paul, I know you. I think you said this was like your second or third highest rated match of the night.
No. I actually was like third or fourth lowest.
Oh,
yeah.
CM Punk and Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I loved it. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a great show. But yeah, it was. Yeah,
you had a lot of high rated matches.
I did. Yeah. My star ratings are available. I'll tweet it out.
There you go, man.
Wait, how many matches are you up to at this point?
I'll tell you exactly in a second here. 2,335.
Jesus. You've officially rated probably like, I don't know, 5x, 10x more matches.
About 5,500 in the last 2 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Punk comes out, and a lot of people were like, why is he so pissed? And I was like, that's just resting Punk face. He's always like that. But it was actually for a reason. Like, he was really mad because of what had just happened. So he wasn't, painting the smile on his face there. And so he and Joe have a match. There's a little bit of throwback to early Joe and Punk matches. Punk even won with his old finisher, and I was very thankful for that, because when he was the vampire, the golden vampire guy, and he wasn't even tired at all, he could barely get Joe up in that GTS. So this was the right finish for the end of this, because I can't imagine 15 minutes into the match how that GTS was going to look. Joe, I thought, did a really good job of entertaining, especially when they were outside of the ring. He was playing to the crowd. He was doing some fun stuff with them. But this match was for Punk to win. And I was sad that it was only for CM Punk's fake world belt, and Joe's title wasn't on the line, which allows Joe to keep being the ROH TV champion for going on a year and a half or even more now. But ultimately, I will say, as an opener, I thought the match was just okay. It's tried to set a tone, and I think it slightly under-delivered for me. But I also see in our Discord that a lot of people really liked it. So it might have just been a thing with me. I kind of wanted a little bit more excitement to kick off the show, and we got more of like a technical wrestling match.
I thought, like, of the 3 matches they've had this year, it was probably the weakest. But the other 2 were really good, and this I thought was really good as well. The other 2 were just better. I thought it was a good opener. Like, Punk looked like he was having a lot of fun. Like, once he got over whatever happened backstage, like, he was into the spectacle of everything that was going on. He was playing to the crowd. I love the spot they did where they recreated the Hogan. Punk is basically the Hogan villain of the week, and Samoa Joe doing the no, and yeah, that was cool. And then he did a couple Terry Funk spots, which I really liked. There's probably some other stuff in there that I missed, because Punk does a lot of that stuff. Sometimes you got to rewatch it 2 or 3 times to pick up all the different tributes that he does. But I thought overall it was a really good opener, and kind of surprised that CM Punk is now reduced to an opener. But whatever. That's what you're there.
Originally when he came out first, I was like, oh, that just means the elite matches are going to be in the latter half. They're kind of getting those guys away. And that was not, because all the elite stuff happened just right after him. So it was clearly, our buddy Larry Caution said that he thought some of the idea might have been to get some of the big stars on early, so that if you forgot that this show was happening so early, maybe you have friends calling each other up going like, hey, Samoa Joe and CM Punk, you should buy this pay-per-view. So that's why he thought. I think that's a logical reason to have those guys early. And they had a lot of matches that were big matches that people were looking forward to. So even if you put Punk and Joe on first, it's not like having Jericho and Ospreay on, third from the top was the bad decision. No, that was actually a really good decision to have that. So, Jeremy, any quick thoughts on this one?
I always kind of thought that some of the main eventers, if they're not going to be on last, they just kind of want to be on first, so that they get the that impression. And that was my immediate thought of, like, if you're not going to be on last, CM Punk's going to be on first, and that ended up being the case. It was a good match. I kind of think that at this point we need to close the book on the CM Punk Samoa Joe feud. There's nothing really more that we can get from this, and I hope that this, in fact, is it, and we never do it again, or at least for a very long time.
A very long time puts these guys at a certain age.
If CM Punk is around for a very long time.
Maybe great for them to wrestle. So the second match, I would say, is not the worst match of the night, by far, not clearly. We'll save that for later in the show. But I would say this was my most disappointing match because of the level of talent that was in this match. So we don't see Hangman Page a lot, so it's great to see Hangman Page. Takeshita, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Jay White, Juice. All of these guys are fantastic, and I individually love them all. I'm a little miffed that, still Kenny Omega is like just this crazy opportunity to be just the biggest star in wrestling, and they don't push him that way. I don't know why, but there were so many sloppy spots in this match that I was so surprised, because of the level of wrestlers involved. And I'm going to explain one to Paul, because he Yeah, I wanted to tell him the one that bothered me the most, and it's not even that big of a deal, but I just noticed it, and I was just like, gosh, stuff like this bothers me, in these big moments. So I forget, it was Hangman and somebody else on the apron. Takeshita was in the ring. He was selling because they were teasing Hangman's lariat, and so Takeshita's selling, and he is like doubled over, just like selling. Then stuff happens on the apron. So he stands up and he looks at what's going on the apron, and they do the thing. And then he's got to get back in position. So once they're done on the apron, then he goes back to holding his stomach again. And it's stuff like that where I think in an indie show, you kind of get a kick out of it. But on this professional wrestling show, biggest wrestling show of all time, biggest stage, the talent, and you have stuff like that in the match, I'm just like, gosh, this isn't like, these guys are too good to be off on that. You also had Kota Ibushi and Kenny Omega as the Golden Lovers, a historical tag team, and Ibushi's a second and a half behind Omega on everything. Some of that is just the rust. He hasn't wrestled, he's hurt, but still, like, they put them in the ring together to have these opportunities for us as wrestling fans to go, dang, I just really love them together. And Kota Ibushi's like just messing it up. And I'm just like, I cannot say that was a great match when these great wrestlers are a little off on stuff. So that is my spiel on why I didn't think this match was great. But now, Paul, you can tell me why you did think it was really good.
First of all, JR, why does everything have to be golden? I laughed at that. And then Excalibur trying to figure out a way to answer it without explaining it.
He should have just said, stay gold, JR. Stay gold.
I just, like, there was a few, like you said, I mean, the funny thing is I would say, even though I really liked this match and I thought it was excellent, I was also disappointed. I thought it was going to be better. I thought we were going to get, like, a near 5-star classic that was going to steal the show. And it wasn't close to that.
No.
And these guys are all capable of that. So in that sense, that's why I was disappointed, but I thought it was still really good. I thought the stuff with Omega and Takeshita was incredible. Like, however long it was that they got together, 3 or 4 minutes, where it was just the two of them in there together. And that was a great cleanser for next week, that, the match that we're going to see. I thought Hangman was a little off at times, and you mentioned one spot.
He's rusty too.
Yeah, they just
he's not allowed in an arena. How can he practice?
Yeah.
He is the most underutilized guy. I mean, when we get around to voting on the Wrestling Observer Awards, like, I might have to remember him for whatever that award is, underrated or something, like underpushed. And yeah, Bushi was off, although he wasn't as off as he was in the Blood and Guts. So I'll take the improvement. And everyone
glass
else
in his shoes, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I know.
We'll slow you down.
Yeah, but Jay and Juice, I mean, they were great. I mean, yeah, it's when you watch this, you can't help but think, like, man, you got these great singles wrestlers, and Omega could have had a singles match with any one of them that would have been better than this match in his sleep. But the funny thing is, I will say that by the end of the show, I can kind of see why Omega didn't have a singles match on this show. Because there was other singles matches that were more important for this show, for ongoing storylines. And if you would have had Omega out there outshining everyone, unless he was going to be the next world title challenger, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense. So I can kind of see why they did it. And then we're going to get that match next week, which people will theoretically pay to see.
Yes. Do you think that we will see other matches from this match also split up for All Out? Like, could we see Hangman and Ibushi against Jay and Juice?
Maybe Jay and Juice against FTR.
That'd be good. That'd be great, actually.
Yeah, and 3, because they each won 1, so do that at All Out, which I think personally was the best tag team match we've seen this year. So a rematch of that, I'd be fine.
Yeah, that was great stuff.
Yeah.
Jeremy, thoughts on this one?
I thought Jay White and Juice Robinson maxed out their visibility, maximized everything that they needed to do to look good from the entrance all the way to the end of the match. I thought Kota Ibushi, frankly speaking, he just needed to have a really good singles match and get his confidence back and figure out what he can do without like having a part to play in other matches, because these ensemble matches are not giving him the confidence and the footing that he needs to be Kota Ibushi. He's fine.
He's not a great secondary guy. Like, he needs to be a major part of the thing.
He looks fine, but Kota Ibushi shouldn't look fine. He should look outstanding. He should look amazing. And you've seen glimmers of it here and there, and he's trying to like hit the move with Omega at the same time, and he slips on the rope, and then he does the springboard off the bottom rope instead of the top rope, and you're just like, you're looking good, you're almost there, but it's just like, it doesn't seem like it's his athletics. It's just something, it seems more mental. And the only other thing is I could tell there was worry for me watching the end of this match when Takeshi got the flash pin on Omega, and the entire audience felt like, oh, this is just a transition for a show that we're supposed to watch.
They realized that at that finish, they were like, oh, this is not the end of the game here. This is just the part of the storytelling. And you know, we sort of knew that, but you know, I'm sure not everybody did.
When the reality hit in for them, there was almost a deflation that they weren't going to get conclusive things. This wasn't like a blow off show, and then the calendar starts over tomorrow. Like, the business was going to keep on going.
Yeah. All right, my favorite match of the night, and what I really thought was the true kickoff to the show, because after this match, it just felt like the show started to hum, and it was just it just became really, really good, which is the Bucks and FTR. And I almost feel, and it's sort of similar to what we were just talking about, where Omega's not the star of this show, as he may have been on the last show. He is, he is leading to other things. I sort of saw this match in the same way, not exactly the same way, but the Bucks and FTR were here to really have a really good match that, when you pulled back to the big picture, really didn't mean anything to the big picture of the show, except when you think of the matches and the work, it kind of meant everything to me as far as getting this show going. It was the first match where I thought, like, okay, they really had some good ideas to get things going, to really make people feel like their $50 was worth it. Like, this match to me was that match, and it just kind of set the bar for everything else. And I'll just explain, but I thought the way that they got to the finish was one of the greatest tag team finishers of all time. You know, them setting up the Meltzer driver and then into the what are those FTR called?
Shatter Machine.
The Shatter Machine. It was perfectly timed, majestic. The way they shot it was brilliant, and they didn't shoot everything good on this show, but they shot that thing perfectly, and culminates with this great match. FTR, now they want to play, good guys and shake the hands, and Bucks are like, no, F you. You've been dicks to us this whole time. We're not going to give you that benefit of the doubt. And so they leave you wanting to see more, which is great. But also at the same time, this was not the star match this was not the main event of the show. This was what we needed at that time. Jeremy, I'll let you talk about this one first.
This feels like a best of 3 is going to become a best of 5 at some point. They're going to be going back and forth and so on. I thought this match was very good. It was not the best match they've ever had. I don't think it's the best match either team's had this year. But for this crowd and this evening, it was exactly the match they needed to have. Like you said, it hit at exactly the right point. I thought the first match of the show was okay. I thought the second match was a mess. And then this one was like, okay, now we have a show. And it went upwards from there. I like this match a lot. It wasn't my favorite match of the night like you, but all positive things, yeah.
All right, Paul.
I agree with you, Garrett, that I thought it was the best match of the night. On any other year, I mean, I would actually say it's like almost a match of the year contender. Like, I really, really like this match. But this has been an incredible year. Yep. So I wouldn't say that this year. And maybe like I'd have to really go back and look. And I mean, for whether I thought it was even the best, it may have even been my favorite of the three that they've done. I'm real big on like how matches finish, so that's going to play a lot into how I remember. And like you said, Garrett, like that was just an incredible finish, and I really loved everything they did in this match. Like the way they worked it, they built to it. I don't know how long it was. It felt like they could have gone another 10 minutes and
22.
it wouldn't have made it any worse. It might have even been better. So they left a little bit in the tank for a rematch. I think these are like, I think the Young Bucks, are the best tag team that there's ever been. And I think FTR may be the best tag team right now. So you're getting two of the very best of all time against each other. You can't help but be great. I did like the thing at the end. I wonder if it wasn't a little cutesy inside, given that FTR is best friends with CM Punk, and that whole thing was FTR offering an olive branch and the Bucks going F you, like perhaps a little bit of inside joke there. But I overall, like I'm intrigued. And if they do a best of 5, like Jeremy suggested, which I also think is going to happen, I think that probably tells you the Bucks are winning the next 2. But we'll see.
It would be interesting if you do this best of 5, and it would be like the Strikeforce Grand Prix, where the titles just are going to bounce back based on who wins. Like Strikeforce to do those tournaments, and if the champ is in the tournament, that championship could change hands 3 times going into the finals, right? Like I would like to see the best of be,
or like they did,
which was kind of like the trios. They did the trios tournament.
Yeah. Or and then that could even lead into the real money match, which I think is the Elite against CMFTR. So if they can ever do
everything, we hear about that though is the Bucks are the holdout,
right? So but time and money heals all wounds.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just maybe they're literally playing chess with Tony Khan's checkbook there.
There you go. But that we may be talking a year. That could be All In main event next year. If they do everything right.
Tony Khan was big bank take little bank today. He spent like this show was going to be successful, like beyond no matter what. He ponied up for music. He ponied up for awesome fireworks. Just man, this man puts he
ponied up for Sue in a minivan.
Yeah, that tripped out minivan was something else.
Okay,
Mercedes probably wasn't cheap.
We'll talk about that in a second because this is we'll just talk about it now because it is the match. But the Sue in the minivan, did Moxley kiss her?
He reached in and it looked like he either grabbed her or he gave her a kiss on the cheek, and it was a blinking you miss it moment before he got pulled away.
So I thought he kissed her, and Jeremy said pie face, and I was like, no, that's too violent. Like you can't pie face an older woman.
Well, was that the guy on the other side that would be the driver's side if it was in North America? But they were
because the video was locked in on Sue on the passenger side, and so everybody
was passenger side
Sue was on a passenger side on a European car. So everybody was on. So they were going outside to grab the weapons. And then Moxley went in first. He got into it with Sue in some way, shape, or form. And it was such a blinking you miss it. We couldn't tell if he gave her a kiss on the cheek or pie-faced her.
Okay. I hope he pie-faced.
Can you imagine? Okay.
I don't like Sue.
Okay. Think about, okay. Now okay, you don't like Sue.
No.
So maybe you're okay with this. But imagine if you are Sue, you are there to deliver these pans so that to add to the weapons of the match, and a bloody John Moxley face comes right at you. What do you do?
I don't think Sue's naive to the game at this point.
Maybe she'll do what she did in that Rampage match and go, ah!
Man.
Yeah.
All right. So,
well, you know what? If it's a choice between being pie-faced or being kissed by a bloody Moxley, maybe I'd rather be pie-faced.
I think you'd rather be, but Moxley's hand's probably bloody too. So no matter what, you get blood in this thing. All right, let's talk about this match now. I want to put over. I like to follow the Ryan Howard's play-by-play when he does the play for F4W. He is so good about keeping up with everything. Like, I don't know how he's able to watch and type at the same time, because I've seen Dave do this, and then you see the output of what Dave types, and it's literally not English. Like, I'm like, how did, like, you can't even read what you just typed because you're not looking at the keyboard when you're watching the TV. Ryan Howard is so good, and he gives so much detail into his play-by-play, and that's what I'm using as we talk about this. So shout out to Ryan Howard, who I don't even know. I've just mentioned to him on Twitter how good he is at this thing. So I'm not putting him over because I know him. I'm putting him over because he's really good at the play-by-play stuff. So I'm not going to recap this match because there's too much stuff that was going on. But it was a stadium stampede match that was essentially an Anarchy in the Arena in a stadium, because there weren't any pre-recorded, produced segments. The camera did miss some things for sure. I think they were best to have the split screen so that they would miss less stuff. There was a little bit of a worry that Penta got hurt for real, but it was just a setup for him to come back as Penta Dark, the meaner, more evil version of Penta here in this match, which did not play into the finish as far as I can remember. And it was, even though I don't like these matches, I don't like the wild, crazy brawls, I don't like Orange Cassidy putting his fist in glass, whether it's pretend glass or Jack Perry glass. Just the idea of what happens in these matches, I'm not a fan of it. So I'm going to say that first and foremost. What they did, with the exception of Chucky T, was fantastic. Now, Chucky T may have been the smartest man in this entire show, because that brother did nothing in a match where everybody did something crazy. His partner, Trent, took so many crazy bumps. I was like, man, are you bumping for the both of you, or like, what is the deal here? But just tremendous stuff in this match all the way through. Orange Cassidy, I think, was the babyface star of this match as far as what he did. He got really bloody as well. Cesaro did a fantastic uppercut on him where he threw him halfway into the, up into the stadium. Moxley, of course, was doing anything and everything. He had those little sticks sticking out of the top of his head. I think, like, was it part of his eyelid that was like hanging off the side? Like, there was something near his eye that was
at
like
the
very
end. There was a large piece of flesh hanging over his eye off of it near his nose, and it was like, please cut away from that angle.
Eddie Kingston, sort of like the original Anarchy in the Arena, where he comes back from the dead. That was another thing that they used, where he came back and crowd popped for him again. He was wearing his Patrick Ewing jersey. Just so much great stuff in a match that, again, I don't generally like, but I did love what they did. I did love the story they told. And it looks like, as Sam said, we're probably going to get Moxley and Orange Cassidy at All Out. So Orange Cassidy with the orange punch, as his hand was wrapped in glass, as it was taped to the duct tape on Claudio, and they got the win here. Paul, what'd you think?
I thought this match was great. It's the first time I've gotten to see we'll just call it an Anarchy in Arena in the match, because that's what it was. And I haven't seen one of those on a broadcast. I've been live for every one of them. So that was interesting.
Me too.
See. Yeah.
Now that I think about it, me too.
Yeah. So that was interesting to see from that perspective, and I can see that it makes the match better.
It was way better than live, right?
Yeah,
way better.
Absolutely. So I really, really like this match a lot. Again, like in a down year, this might be like a match of the year kind of deal, but again, not this year. And everybody was great. I'm not sure Ortiz was even in the match. You mentioned Chucky T, but like, I remember Ortiz's entrance where he looked disinterested, and I don't remember seeing him much at all after that.
Santana had some like
Mike Santana.
Right?
You say his name without saying Mike.
Yes, Mike Santana now.
Yeah.
Mike.
It has to be Mike. now. That's contractually obligated, Garrett.
That's fine.
Yeah,
it brings him in a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Sure. Like,
I love the entrance when the BCC came in looking like they walked off the set of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This was, I mean, it was exactly what it needed to be, and just great. They didn't go too far with a lot of the stuff. I mean, the Moxley with the skewers was as far as they were going to go, and that's fine. They didn't do a flaming table, thank God. And I just thought the finish was weird. If you're setting up Orange Cassidy and Moxley, why Orange Cassidy is pinning Claudio? I'm not really sure how that you get to an international title match from that. To me, that seemed to be setting up Orange Cassidy to be challenging for the ROH title, which we'll probably get at some point too, I would imagine. Yeah. So, but I'm not going to complain about Moxley and Orange Cassidy because that's going to be freaking great. And I could see Moxley winning that title and then defending it on indies all over the place.
And it also is a little bit of a zig or a zag, whichever one, because we thought maybe we were going to see Moxley in Kingston. So it looks like it's Moxley and OC.
Which I think we should get Eddie and Claudio. I think that's the natural match. Yeah.
Is that a Ring of Honor match or is that an AEW pay-per-view match?
I think it means more for Ring of Honor. I don't think
it was supposed to be the one in July, right? And then they realized that, oh crap, he's actually not going to be here.
So if you can save that for whatever the next ROH pay-per-view is, to me that gives you more extra business on Ring of Honor than not one person is buying all in or all out just to see that, but people will buy Ring of Honor to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you think? Remember when Tony Khan wanted to see if he could get Eddie Kingston back for Blood and Guts? Do you think that he was using Hulk Hogan math for being in Japan and the U.S. at the same time? You know, that whole thing. MJF made that comment in the presser. That's why.
Speaking of Japan, that's where Moxley got the skewer idea from. Back on July 4th and July 5th, he had the matches with Jun Kakai and El Desperado and Homicide, and they were doing the skewers both nights of those matches and just plugging them right in there. And it was like, you seem to be fine from this. And it's like, oh, they're doing this again? Yeah, he picked that one up in Japan.
You know, I would be fine with never seeing that ever again. But because it got over so crazy, we're going to see it again.
Yep.
It's insane.
The Mohawk of skewers.
It's crazy. But, you know, as far as effort is concerned, like, holy crap, these guys worked their rear ends off. I hope they got paid what they're worth because this match was nuts. Now, go. So you're going to say something?
He was not the star of the show in any way, shape, or form, but I really got to tip my cap to Trent Beretta in this match one more time because
I just feel like he's going to hurt himself every time I see him work that hard.
He does hurt himself every time he works that hard.
I know, but I'm talking about hurt himself to where he's not going to be able to wrestle anymore. Hurt himself.
He's had a fantastic month where he's just been going hard and having matches all over the place. So hopefully he got the credibility he needs to kind of take it easy for a little while and just, you know, go a little higher up on the card now because he did the work for both him and Chuck Taylor to elevate up the card off of this match. So hopefully he gets something out of it.
So unfortunately for the women's Fatal 4-Way, they had to follow this crazy match. And I thought they did a really good job following this crazy match. Now, this was going to be polarizing no matter what, because the idea behind this match was to make it a pretty big deal for Saraya and her family. She comes out to Queen. You know, again, Tony Khan putting his money into his investment, which was amazing. But you know, she had her family there, and it's not like she's a baby face. So the way that the optics there were a little weird, but they kind of told you what the story of this thing was going to be, which is this is really a celebration for her. And so I don't think anybody at that point was surprised that she won this match. I thought that was the right thing, was for her to win the match. Should she be a long-term champion? Probably not, because her wrestling game isn't necessarily, where you would want a champion to be. But she's also a heel. We'll see what happens with the Outcasts, because there was a little bit of a divide with the Outcasts. Toni Storm played her character to the tilt, and it is my favorite gimmick in wrestling. I know Paul disagrees with that, but she is so good at this new character. It is amazing. And, you know, unfortunately, they tried, and I don't even say unfortunately, because Britt is going to get something because she's Britt. She's very well liked. You know that Tony Khan really likes her on this roster. She was like the fourth member of this match rather than the one woman who was on All In and then All In 2023. Like they tried to play that up. She was just the fourth member of this match. But I do think something coming out of this, she'll be fine. Like she's probably going to be in, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like Saraya and Britt at All Out. But I liked the stuff that they did with Ruby coming out, with Tony and Saraya having to decide. It was a little similar to what we would see later in the night with MJF and Adam Cole. But these women, they're like, screw the friendship, we're going for it. And Saraya wins the title. And it was a nice celebration for her. And I imagine, you know, for her and her family, it was the biggest moment of their wrestling careers. Right. And so it was really special and really cool to see that. But I know there's going to be some of the AEW audience who are going to say, I can't believe they put it on this former WWE woman who's not any good. And it kind of ruins the idea of what AEW wrestling is, blah, 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 blah. This is why they did it, though, and I thought it made it a really cool moment on the show. Paul?
Some of the keys here, you mentioned the entrance. I thought that was incredible for this family, you know, who had a promotion that, you know, we've seen it in Fight for Your Family and, you know, some of the documentaries and stuff. I mean, literally wrestling in front of 15 or 20 people, to be out there in front of 80,000. And then her mom got to do that spot where, you know, they did the miscommunication with Toni Storm and she got nailed and she sold like a true champion that she is. I thought that was great. The key spot in the match was the spot where the bottom turnbuckle got removed. And I thought it was really good the way they set this up, because earlier we had already seen Toni Storm hit the hip attack with the turnbuckle, and that was bad enough. And so everyone watching this was like, no, just don't hit it. Don't hit it. And then Ruby Soho from the back was, you know, she got out there and she's like, you're going to break her neck if you do this. And then Tony was like questioning it. And then that was a key point to the match. And I thought it was really well done if they are breaking up the Outcasts, because you had all three characters. Everything they did made sense. You got Saraya as a massive babyface in front of 80,000 people winning the belt. You have Toni furthering her character, which again, I don't like it as much as a lot of other people. I really like her performance. I think she's nailing it. And it's a little too derivative for me. And I'm not exactly sure how they got there, but
the starlet.
Yeah, it's Gloria Swanson from like the 20s. I guess enough times passed that
they need to give her some like old timey things to say to further.
They need to put her promos in black and white. You know,
I had wondered if her entrance music was an attempt to like spotlight steal from Saraya, because it wasn't her typical music.
Yeah,
and it was one of those like, I'm going to have this grand entrance, blah blah blah.
Can I be honest with you? I just miss her stripper music. I really like the stripper music that she used to have. But no, I thought it was great. And you know what? Saraya winning the title, especially watching it all, there's no other choice. Like you had to, like, this was her moment. And you know what? Yeah, she's not the best wrestler and she can lose the title next week. It doesn't matter. She got this moment. Honestly, she could retire now. I'm not saying she needs to, like, you know, she was fine in this match. But I mean, it's never going to get any better. So, you know what? Like, if she's been on borrowed time with this next stuff and she's just, you know, trying to get here for this moment,
and she got
me, yeah. I mean, and you know what? And you can stick around as long as you want, but she doesn't need to do anything else, because this was the perfect culmination. If the Fight for Your Family movie was this was the end scene.
It's the sequel.
Yes. Yeah. They could do a sequel. That'd be a good movie.
WWE ain't producing that one, but they could.
Dwayne, man,
you
know, he needs a hit.
I thought it was really good. It made sense that they belted Saraya in this match. You know, I wonder what they do with it next. They could do, you know, if you really wanted to get crazy, they could do a mystery opponent for next week and then bring in Mercedes, just like that if they really wanted to. Like that's how quickly that they could flip this and do something for it, because it was pretty definitive if it's not going to be Toni Storm immediately next week, or Ruby Soho, or But it really feels like somehow the Outcasts are affecting with each other in some way, shape, or form. So if it's not that, they should get crazy and bring in somebody from the outside potentially as a mystery opponent for next week.
By the way, I want to put over the Discord one more time because, again, we had some really fun discussions. And if you are interested in joining the Discord, shoot me an email, gg@fightgamemedia.com. Now, we don't allow everybody, and you got to be cool. You can't, no trolling is like the main rule. The other way to get in is to join the Patreon. You automatically get an invite to the Discord if you join the Patreon. So we just got a note from our buddy Miguel Rubio. By the way, also shout out to all the people in the chat who are hanging out. Dazza's in there. Adam Susan is in there. Colin jumped in. A bunch of people who are just hanging out in there. Thanks to everybody for Grandpa. Oh, that's Paul.
Double dipping.
So there was supposedly another pay-per-view coming. According to, Miguel is the one who tipped us off, but Sean Ross Sapp tweeted about 15 minutes ago. Tony Khan says October 1 from Seattle will be the first AEW Wrestle Dream pay-per-view in honor of Antonio Inoki. What does that mean? Wrestle Dream in honor of Antonio Inoki. So
I get incredibly concerned when Tony Khan wants to fan book Japanese wrestling.
Big bad billionaire Tony Khan trying to step on NXT's toes because they got a special PLE that weekend. Nasty, man.
Is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
So
but no, they have no mercy. No mercy that weekend.
So Seattle is a great market for them. Defy, obviously, Bryan Danielson. I wonder if Bryan Danielson he's probably not going to be ready for that show. That's interesting. But I think the other question, and we'll get to the rest of the show. We only have a couple more matches, but that's 3 pay-per-views in like a matter of a month and a half or something like that.
3 pay-per-views in 5 weeks.
Also going against the NFL, which is interesting because that's a Sunday. And
then you're going to have another pay-per-view in November.
Yeah.
So interesting stuff here as far as the business of AEW. And, some of this is he's got to figure out what is the right rhythm and temperature for pay-per-views for AEW, because it's pretty clear that they sell, the fan base represents, for these 6 shows a year, whatever it was. And now you're asking for more. And I think, what do you think the average buys has been over the last few years, Paul?
I think about 150,000.
So let's say you do 150,000 for your 6 shows a year. Maybe he's okay with 125,000 for 8 shows, or 125,000 for 9 shows. Maybe you do lose a few on average, but you have more shows. And this is basically how Vince McMahon stopped losing money, was to add more shows and to charge more.
Especially if the end goal is to get some sort of a deal like WWE has, where you're getting guaranteed money for your pay-per-views or PLEs, and maybe Warner Brothers wants 12, and so this is just getting people ready for it.
Or maybe you do 3 ROH shows and 9 AEW shows. I don't know why you need to still do ROH shows.
You had Double or Nothing in May. You had Forbidden Door in June. You had Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor in July. You've got All In this month. You've got All Out next month.
Week.
You've got this next one in October.
Yeah,
You've got
Jeremy's right.
You got Full Gear in November.
And then you're
going to have another Ring of Honor
Final Battle.
Yeah. So every month you've got something lined up now.
Yeah. So maybe that is the goal, is if you add in the Ring of Honor stuff, it is 12.
And then you can get if they can get $30 to $40 million a year from WBD for the rights to broadcast these PLEs
right under our noses.
Yeah, on Max or BR or whatever.
I still think that sort of deal is probably not happening. Peacock, even though for us, for WWE, people who watch WWE shows, is great, but it's not like they have made money on that deal specifically.
Or is it like an ESPN Plus deal where they're paying for the rights to sell the pay-per-views.
Right. And then you don't have to worry about the cable companies.
Yeah.
If Tony gets Julia and Mercedes Moné on that Wrestle Dream card.
That's probably the idea.
That's probably why she was there, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I'm not sure how much that's all Mercedes. I mean, right. Julia has no mainstream appeal in North America.
They need to introduce her,
or you have a New Japan show in Las Vegas that's going to have a fraction of the coverage that you can do that. You might do it at Historic Expo for 2 in November if they do it, but if they have a Wrestle Dream show in October, that seems like a very interesting time to put a match like that.
That's before the Vegas show, though.
What?
Right?
Yeah, the Wrestle Dream show would be in October 1st. I think they already have a match lined up for Julia at
Sam's Town.
At the Sam's Town.
October 28th.
But that could change. That hasn't been announced yet, and it's really just been a rumor.
Well, there's another name that Jeremy dropped to me earlier today. One of Mariah May from Stardom, who, if you listen to Scott Edwards' 5-star on our network, the Patreon, he did a whole show where he talked a lot about Mariah May. So, there are you could sort of see some of the little clues and hints being dropped that would make sense to do this show. So that's really interesting. I don't know if I could keep up with the product, but
God bless everyone who can stick up with.
I'm gonna have to get Preet Paul to give me a little disc. Like a little training session on how to order these pay-per-views.
Yeah, Preet, Larry Caution, they know the deal. Kayfabe that, everybody. All right. So as we get to the end of the show, so after the Saraya match was Darby and Sting versus Swerve and Christian. I saw a lot of people saying if it was only AR Fox instead of Christian. I completely disagree, by the way. The level of workers with AR Fox and Christian is like just a wide gap, because Christian is a little bit older, but he's so much of a better wrestler. I was watching the crazy match that they had on Dynamite, and one of my pet peeves, and I probably care about this more than most, but is when you do a match where there's a lot of stuff going on and it's just like fight, like that match was a fight. And a couple of different times, all AR Fox cared about was the next spot and getting into the right like he almost just like forgot that this was supposed to be a fight. My problem with AR Fox's wrestling, but Christian, I thought, was much better than what they would have done. Though it did kind of ruin their story because they had to pivot on a story, and their pivot did not really make sense. Sting, this was all about Sting. This was about celebrating this dude who's been here for a long time. Darby was taking crazy bumps, doing the coffin drop onto an actual coffin and missing the guy. Swerve, I think, was probably the star, maybe one of the most valuable wrestlers on the show tonight. He was an absolute star, even in losing the match. The mannerisms, the selling, everything. I thought the entrance with Love Bug Starsky's nephew or something, and you old school hip hop fans know the name of Love Bug Starsky, and so just good stuff. Like, and again, a coffin match is not necessarily my cup of tea, but these guys made it work. All 4 men were excellent, and on a stunt match like this, got the fans just super into it. Kudos to them. Sting traps Swerve in, even though a little piece of hair of Swerve was outside of the coffin, I think, right? Like his
technicality, technicality.
He wasn't fully in there. So, but yeah. Anyways, Paul, thoughts on the coffin match?
I thought it was exactly what I was expecting. I think you're right that I think this is the divide between a certain kind of fan and the kind of fan that you are, and probably I am, and maybe even Jeremy is. Where they would think that having AR Fox in the match is better than having Christian in the match, because there's different fans that are looking for different things.
Yeah.
And if you wanted the spectacular moves and you're not really too worried about psychology, or like if the AR Fox raising his hands before spots doesn't bother you, then you probably wanted AR Fox in this match. And obviously the story they told was all about AR Fox and Nick Wayne, which again, like Nick Wayne being such a central part of this, and then
afterthought.
he was nothing. He came out and he got
I have
punked out by Luchasaurus.
Oh yeah, Jeremy had a great line about the Nick Wayne Luchasaurus thing.
Yeah, it was just one of those. You have Luchasaurus out there, and he's running roughshod on the baby faces, and then Nick Wayne comes out there. He power bombs him. He picks him up and he carries him away, so that the heels now have an even match against the baby faces, as opposed to sticking around and making sure that they're advanced. He just takes him away, and now it's a fair fight again. I'm like, what is happening?
Okay, you want to know what it was reminiscent of to me? And again, this is because my brain is either in WCW 96 or WWE 91. Remember at the end of SummerSlam when it was Hogan and Sid Justice, and Ultimate Warrior chases all the bad guys to the back, and we never see Ultimate Warrior ever again?
Yeah, maybe that's it for Nick Wayne
and Luchasaurus.
Yeah, and the TNT champion, Luchasaurus. But I did think like the match itself, like Sting just continues to defy the law of aging. And I love the video that they did beforehand, the Jack the Ripper stuff, and Darby, I think, produces these videos, and this was probably a career highlight for him.
I couldn't tell if it was Jack the Ripper or Jekyll and Hyde, but either way it worked.
It worked, yeah. But a lot of the London theme stuff tonight, I thought they really nailed really well. They didn't bang you over the head with it like WWE does. And so I really like that aspect of the show overall, and especially here. I love the spot where Sting was in the coffin, and then the cricket bat, breaks the pinfall or whatever you want to call it. I really like this a lot. I think a lot of people are expecting Edge. Unfortunately, Jeremy just maybe mentioned that, or somebody in the chat.
Yeah, somebody in the chat.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
they didn't mention Edge. They mentioned Sexton Hardcastle.
Yeah,
I'm not chatting
because he can't come in as Edge, right?
He can be Adam Cope.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wasn't Christian
music, maybe?
What was the Christian Jungle Boy match? Was that a coffin match too?
I think
San
Francisco.
Yeah. So Christian can start calling himself the king of the coffin match now. I don't know, because he didn't get pinned, right?
No,
that was way cooler back then when they went into the ground and like the thud. This one was just like, okay, in the middle.
Somebody had that tweet about how somebody, just like your fathers, they couldn't escape the coffin or something like that.
Yeah, Christian's promo. Promo.
Yeah.
The thing about AR Fox, and I'm just gonna say this real quick, is the disappointment is the loss of the opportunity for him. I think people, and I think people resonate that he had this big opportunity and it was his time. It appears that it is entirely his own doing, which is unfortunate. But in every timeline, this is a better match than having AR Fox in it.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you are some of the fans, a lot of the fans that AEW attracts really enjoy independent wrestling. And AR Fox is a long-time name, someone who hasn't gotten the opportunity, right? So it makes him an underdog to that fan base. 100% understand why you would like. I personally do not like watching that indie style, and I think he has a really, really heavy indie style. I like professional wrestling. I like the more snug stuff that makes sense. But if you were a fan of his, so be it. Like then of course you would have wanted to see him in this match, because it would have been a fantastic opportunity for him. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And, he may be, not only may he be to blame, but he may be punished a little bit for it, which is also unfortunate, because then, he may miss the break that was the whole reason of the storyline, right? That was created, as Darby saying, you're just you can't get out of your own way. All right. So the next match was, I think this was my second favorite match of the night, though it could have been 5 more minutes and it probably would have been even better, which is Chris Jericho and Will Ospreay. And I was talking to Jeremy pretty much the entire morning of just the idea of this match and why I wanted to see if Jericho was going to win. Now, I didn't think it was going to happen, but my whole basis for wondering if Jericho could win this match is just the fact that, is Tony Khan just going to keep having Will Ospreay win matches and him not being on the roster, not being under contract? Now, Will's promo last week was all about him possibly being a free agent. I just don't get the sense that he wants to leave where he lives, and if he does join AEW, he's going to have to be in the States more. Fly back home once a week, every week. That's just, it doesn't seem realistic. But at the same time, Will Ospreay is also one of the top 2 or 3 wrestlers in all of wrestling today. So that is probably why he needed to win the match. Now, I already know Jeremy's answer, but I'm going to ask Paul this question before we go through this match. We knew that Will Ospreay was going to be the hometown star in this match. Why was his promo heelish on Dynamite?
Well, I'm not sure it was. I thought like the majority of the promo was babyface. Other than, like just targeting Jericho and aligning himself with Callis, but like the whole fighting to, earn money so I could feed my family and put my kid through school and, like all this stuff was like, I was just baffled watching that. And then, and then with Callis, the most evil guy in the company by his side, and Jericho, who's in the middle of a babyface turn. And then this completely sabotages all that. If you put aside all that, yeah, the match was fine. I liked the match. I thought it was very good, almost excellent. It wasn't even close to my favorite match on the show. I thought maybe the worst Will Ospreay singles match I've seen all year, but I've seen a lot of great Will Ospreay singles matches. But by the same token, I thought it was probably the biggest win of his career in some ways. And Jericho putting him over as clean as he did is going to do Will Ospreay. It's going to make him a lot of money. And I said earlier, MJF or Elite and CMFTR headlining next year. So if Will Ospreay signs with AEW, he should be headlining All In next year, challenging for the world title. And this should be step one in the goal to get there. So
that would be an amazing year-long story.
Yeah.
If that was going to be the case.
And beating Kenny at Wrestle Kingdom would be another step to get there.
And then if they do that, maybe 60,000 is within reach for next year.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have a friend that did not go this year that is talking about going next year. And I would love to be able to go next year. Like, I'm going to try to make it happen. I don't know if it's possible, but
you have 52 weeks to talk your wife into letting you do this.
And I have a lot of friends in the UK. If anybody watching, listening, just hit me up. Give me a spot to crash. That'll make it easier. I looked up the flights. It's only like $800.
Jeremy, so you obviously follow New Japan very closely. You do the podcast on our website, on not only on our Patreon but also on our YouTube channel every week, Thursday, with Stephen Conway, live streams 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. You've seen a lot of Will Ospreay matches as well. You haven't rated them all like Paul, so you're gonna have to go back into your brain here. Was this the match that you expected them to have? And ultimately, it sounds like you were very happy with it.
It was never about the match. It was about the scenario. Will Ospreay worked every other match in his career to get to this point. And when that music hit and he came out to 80,000 people who were cheering for him, that was a moment that we all just kind of need to take in and savor, because there hasn't been a UK pro wrestling god hero for that community in 25 years. So him being out there, this is a show of moments, and this moment was bigger than all of them to me. And so watching Will Ospreay go out there, have a perfectly fine 15-minute match with Chris Jericho. Nothing went wrong. Nothing was amazing. Nothing blew anything away. But it's the same thing with Hogan and Andre at WrestleMania 3. You had a big move. The rest of the match wasn't anything, but it was the moment. It was the electricity. It was the aura of anything. And when all said and done,
There wasn't any bear hugs in this match, though, Jeremy. There were no bear hugs in this match.
There were no bear hugs, but there were many elbows and hidden blades and Judas effect.
Remember when Hogan tried to pile drive Andre in the outside? Like, what are you doing, dude?
Oh, nobody threw out their back in that one. Although MJF in the beginning of the pre-show threw out his back, and then he was perfectly fine by the end of it. So they did have a bad back spot at some point in the show. Anyway, this was a moment match where like it wasn't about the match rate or the quality. It was 80,000 people making Will Ospreay and anointing him a wrestling god in the United Kingdom, which is what it always should have been. And they did it. Chris Jericho's the right guy. He even did the whole like I'm passing the torch to you at the very end, whatever that was. I hope it was a torch pass because anything else was just seemed kind of weird for the moment.
So Jericho did the whole thing where he wanted to take the move straight on, like he wanted to be courageous in this. He knew that this young dude was about to beat him, so he faced his fear and took that hidden blade right in the face before that last Stormbreaker. But let's not pretend that Jericho didn't almost get the biggest moment of the night by singing himself to the ring. Paul Fontaine, one of his favorite songs of all time, Judas. That was an amazing moment, right? Like the fact that who gets to sing themselves, is it maybe Coco Beware when he sang the pile driver song? I don't know. Okay, there you go. R-Truth rapping himself down. Yeah. But that was a fantastic one. They had a stage for him, and he starts on the stage singing his song. The way that was, the presentation for that was awesome. So yeah, Jericho's fine. He's still an absolute star. Losing the match here, I mentioned it that I thought he covered himself really well in the promo. He made it so that the fans knew Will Ospreay's kind of supposed to win this match, and if I win the match, then it just shows you how great I am. So I thought the whole thing was fantastic.
You had a great matchup too, based out of this match, which was you mentioned Sammy Guevara versus Will Ospreay.
Oh, I want to see that so bad. And okay, so we'll get to it in that Jericho's upset. Sammy Guevara is his last buddy left from his squad, from the Jericho Appreciation Society. He's wearing his Inner Circle vest there, and he's trying to big up his guy, his mentor. Hey man, you're good. Like, don't worry about it. And Jericho was very upset at him, and he was kind of pushing him off, almost like, I'm bothered. Don't bother me right now. Like, I'm frustrated. Don't bother me. And Sammy just someone took a picture of his face. He made a face when Jericho did this, like the perfect face. Somebody got a great shot at it. By the way, this man just finished his own show on Wrestling Observer Live.
Making a run in.
He came in to say hi, to support us. So thank you very much, Andrew Zarian. Hope you had a great show as well. I would have been on with him today if we didn't do this. So sorry, I couldn't do that. But okay, so last thing is this second from the top. This is the only match I vehemently disliked, which is the trios title match between the House of Black and the Acclaimed with badass Billy Gunn. We did not get the badass music. We did get a t-shirt with the words badass on them. That's as far as we got. But I guess the version of badass Billy Gunn is the version that just eats one of the most devastating finishers in all of wrestling and kicks out. I think that's what that means.
A lot of famous.
This dude was in the ring way too much for my liking. They made it a no holds barred match because it was the challengers can pick the stipulation, so it was a no holds barred match. And geez, man, just if they would just made it a straight match, let Bowen sell, hot tag to Caster, sell, hot tag to Billy Gunn, and you can hit a move and win. And that's a much better story than what they told here, which is that badass Billy Gunn can almost beat House of Black by himself, including Brody King, including Malachi, like just these beasts who are have not overstayed their welcome. In some senses, you could say they are under pushed, and he just eats their lunch, eats the finish, wins the match. He didn't actually get the pin, but he jumped on top of the pin. I was so bothered by this whole thing. I get it, the scissor me daddy, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure that this version of Billy Gunn is over as much as the last version of Billy Gunn. Jeremy, what did you think?
It just kind of felt like they had an idea that seemed really good in like the premise, but when they actually executed it, it was just a series of a couple of half steps that made you think that was a greater change than actually was. This was not the Undertaker going from biker taker to the dead man. This was a guy changing his shirt and doing a couple extra famousers, and that was the extent of the personality shift of this guy. It didn't carry over very well, and they needed something as a plot device to get the belt off of the House of Black and put it on them. But this does not seem like a long, sustainable run for these guys. It seemed like, again, another moment that they wanted to have rather than like, we have a clear plan for this going forward.
What do you think, Paul?
I thought it was weird that you took a guy and the most over gimmick that he's ever had in his career, and then you're going to bring back probably the worst gimmick that he ever had in his career as a flashback.
No. The worst one is
Chuck.
No. That was actually better than the one I'm about to say.
Oh, yeah.
One Billy Gunn.
Right.
That was the worst one.
Yeah, but maybe the reason is because by going back to the Attitude Era, it allows you to do the Julia Hart spot that people in the chat are mentioning.
Maybe, that did not go over well.
That was ill-advised. I thought also, like, just having, you mentioned the, him kicking out of the finisher. Also having him, you got Brody King, who's this monster that is just overpowers everyone in AEW and is like twice the size of most of the guys he's in there with. And Billy Gunn is towering over him. I mean, this was just so, in retrospect, and even going in, like, I was kind of wondering, that seemed like a cool idea. Like, this should have been on the pre-show.
By the way, Kevin Ely just one-upped us on bad Billy Gunn gimmicks. The Rockabilly.
Well, I mean, honestly, even the Cowboy Billy Gunn was probably worse.
Smoking Guns. They were over for a
I like
while.
that they actually pinned Brody instead of Buddy Matthews, which is always the default guy that they'll pin in order to get away with, protecting the other guys.
I'm surprised they didn't pin Black after, like, how they just had him get.
Did he do a curtain call goodbye this time? I'm going to be gone.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mean, I felt like they were writing him off. Like, I mean, I don't know if they are.
There feels like a lot of guys that are that just don't seem to want to be around right now.
Yeah, I mean, I hope things are okay with him.
I like
he's
that
such a great talent that he could still be that.
I'll
tell my quick Billy Gunn story. I've told this one a few times, but the AEW, the original Double or Nothing pre-sale ticket party that they had, I think it was like in February or something for that May pay-per-view. And of course, I'm thinking like, we're going to go where media is. Dave and I have our credential, and Dave just wanders. And I'm like, where's this dude going? Like, everyone's over here. And so he just kind of wanders, and I'm going to follow him. So he wanders all to basically to where the talent is. So I'm sure someone had told him, like, just come over here. And so, all this is where the Ryan Satin so frustrated that I've mentioned before. Like, he was so frustrated because he was part of the regular media and didn't get a lot of the interviews, but then Dave finagles his way to this other side. And so I'm in the back, and, when you're in the back and you can actually see these people up close, it's a little weird. Like, I saw Chris Jericho and I was like, he is much shorter and way thicker than he looks on television. So that was one. And just, a lot of the early folks that, the SoCal guys, if you think of the first AEW pay-per-view, right? And all of those guys are back there. There's one gentleman who I'm like, this is the biggest human I think I've ever seen in my life. And then I walk closer and I was like, wait, I think this dude's sitting down. It was Billy Gunn in a chair, like the most giant human. He was bigger sitting in a chair than 75% of their roster. just sitting down and just being
large men,
like,
large men.
My goodness, he
I'm a large man myself, but there are larger men. Tiny.
I feel like a large
that was
man when I'm
impressive.
next to Adam Cole, but that's it.
Yeah, Adam Cole was, he was in some good shape today, but it just almost made him look even thinner. But hey, that's just his body type. Some like MJF can put on that muscle, and Adam Cole's just different body type. But hey, I think we overstayed a little bit longer than I wanted to. But hey, this is, again, I'm going to harken back to what we said at the beginning. This was a giant success for AEW. Tony Khan, even all of the things that are going on in the locker room and, with certain talent being frustrated, he can look back on this moment and go, we just ran the most successful wrestling show, at least in, audience wise in the history of professional wrestling, which is a giant thing. And if AEW does not outdo this show ever again, this is still an all-timer. So he can take that one to the bank.
80,000 people at Wembley, man.
But by the looks of Wrestle Dream and all this other stuff, man, he's continuing to put his money into this company and trying to grow and be the best number 2 of all time. And maybe, we're not talking about them taking over Raw in 1834 or 1849 anymore, but to be a really strong number 2 is still a good business for him to be in. So as long as they make a better video game next time, I heard so many bad things about the Stadium Stampede mode in this game. Like 3 different people, including Jeremy Botter, who I talked early when that game, before the game came out, because he had played it. They said that mode sucks. And I was like, God, how can this mode suck? We waited for so long. So yeah, the only blemish right now, business wise,
in the past, they probably never should have announced that video game until they were much closer to completion and happy with the product.
And then they could have just shelved it. They didn't even have to put it out.
Learning.
Anyway,
live and learn.
All right. We'll be back. I believe it's not 100% sure, but I believe we'll have 2 live shows next weekend post Payback. Keela and Scott and Jeremy is going to join them for Saturday night after Payback is over. And then I will be back, I believe, Sunday night after All Out, and we'll sort of figure out if Paul can do it. And Jeremy, I don't know if you're available again, but we'll figure that out. But I think we'll have 2 live stream post shows next weekend on this channel. And then obviously audio goes up.
Holiday weekend for me, so I'm in.
Yeah, great. Perfect. I forgot about that. That makes it even better.
I have detailed guide to navigate. I'd love to be there. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm even more excited now. We don't have to go to work on Monday. But all right. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Jeremy. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and checked us out on our post show. I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.